Hello and welcome to the final episode of the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. It was a good run.
Crazy.
Joining me today to talk about this incredible episode of Succession, Connor's wedding. He may be visually aggravating, but he says he's the best airplane medicine expert. It's Ebube. Ebube, how are you doing? They finally got in touch with you.
I just want to apologize for not getting to the plane in time. I don't have wings. All I could do was get to Teterboro, and they took their time getting back.
Kept trying. They had to use Carl's guy. They had to use Carl's guy, baby. Carl's guy. That's really bad. That's really bad of you.
I told you Carl would have some pivotal role to play. I said it all those years ago. I said it.
Okay, so anyone who's obviously watched Succession this week's episode, you know we have a lot of things to get into. So,
or one big thing, depending on how you prioritize.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, it's really just one big thing as we're talking about before we started recording. Quickly, guys, we are talking about basically any show you're watching right now. Yellow Jackets, The Mandalorian, Ted Lasso. So please check them out on our feed. Please rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. That really helps us beat the algorithm.
Do they know that you're filming?
Yes, they do. Welcome to my life. Anyways, okay. One final thing before we start going into Succession. Actually, two final things, but let me start with the first one. First of all, guys, obviously this episode is coming out later than normal. We didn't receive advanced screeners for this episode, as you can obviously understand why. But as we mentioned previously on previous episodes, some episodes we won't get screeners, so those episodes will come out a bit later than normal, but we always try to get them out as soon as we can. When we do receive screeners, don't worry, those will be out immediately. Quickly, the final thing, I want to quickly shout out a friend of mine. Most people listen to this podcast, you guys will know who I'm talking about. Hilary Arikwe, his handle is Hills, HILZ 18 on Instagram.
Oh boy.
He basically dared me that I wouldn't do this. So here I am doing it, talking about him on the podcast. So girls, check him out on Instagram, HILZ 18 on Instagram. I can't say if he's single. Not because I don't know, but I don't know what lie he's telling girls these days. So I don't know. Check him out, DM him. I just like, yeah, feel free. He's people say he's a good looking guy, not me, but people say so. Yeah, so Hilary, yeah. Hopefully you get some DMs. Okay.
You really thought you wouldn't do that. That's funny.
He angered me, and I was like, what form of retribution do I have? The only power I have over him is I have a podcast. Right? I'm not going to fight him because we're almost 30. And if you guys know Hilary, I can't get in a word battle with him because he will destroy me. So I was like, what do I actually have? What can I do? And I was like, you know what? I can talk about him on the podcast to our 5 listeners. That's what I can do. And here we are. Okay. Let's talk about Succession. Episode 3, season 4, titled... See, Obiора's thing has got in my head now. I never say it like that. Succession season 4, episode 3, titled Connor's Wedding, written by Jesse Armstrong and directed by Mark Mylod.
The GOAT team.
Everybody, they did it. The fucking bastards did it.
They truly did.
Can I give you a bit of insight into my headspace?
Please.
So we were told, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, that we weren't getting screeners for this episode.
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
So, yeah, I mean, so as someone who, does podcasts, watches a lot of TV, I was listening to interviews, okay, obviously something big is happening, right?
Yeah.
And then, there's fucking people, HBO, I love you, thank you for giving us screeners, but you did send me into a spiral for 5 days, because I'm thinking about every possible thing that can happen, and I'm always thinking, I'm like, fuck, they're going to kill Logan. Fuck, they're going to kill Logan. Fuck, they're going to kill Logan. Because I was like, that's what's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much so that, this is not even a joke, I had 2 different dreams last night about Logan dying.
That's how stressed you were.
And I was like, I kept on telling myself that, no, that's not what they're going to do. That's not going to... Because obviously, as you guys know, I think it was first episode, I said, I don't think this show ends with Logan dying.
Or at least that they would telegraph it,
Yes. But then, which I guess we can talk about it now. We'll talk about it a bit later as well. But then him dying in episode 3 is like obviously surprising, but also exactly in line with what I was
It
thinking. I
is,
was like, this
yeah.
show is not gonna. He's not gonna die in episode 9 or 10. That's not the show
It's
they're
the most
telling.
Succession thing they could have done,
Yeah, like him dying in episode 3 is, which is, I'll talk about it in a second because it's a very, very, very interesting creative decision.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I maybe I said we're not getting screeners. I've just been thinking that Logan is going to die, and then I just kept on thinking I was hoping for something else, and then I had my dreams last night. So much so that I woke up and I was like, "Fuck it, let me just watch Succession." Like I can't go back to sleep anymore. So yeah, and then obviously you watch the episode, and then Shiv is wearing a black suit to her brother's wedding. I was like,
That's
"Oh
that's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
like, first of all, why, sis? Like, that was such a weird thing to do in general. It's like, are you going to a funeral? Are you the event planner? Like, your brother is getting married. I don't know. With the whole
yeah."
screeners thing, thankfully, we do have more than 3 people who listen to us have these discussions weekly, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I told a couple of them that, hey, the episode's going to be a little later than usual. I'm guessing something's like going to be happening because, as you said, when they suddenly take away screeners, it's typically towards the end of the season when
Mm-hmm.
plot points that they're just not comfortable leaking at all are going to come into play.
Yeah, like you don't expect to get a season finale screener. You just don't.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
in episode 3, that's obviously a very weird thing to happen. So then you're thinking, is it that something of season ending proportions is going to happen? But then you're like, nah, what are they going to do? That's why it was hard for us to figure out what they might be planning to do with this episode, because you're thinking there's no way they're going to do something like that this close, because even if they don't do it at the end, would it really happen in episode 3 rather than, say, episode
Yeah.
6 or 7,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Jesse Armstrong obviously is not immune to the idea of like shock value. He is a
Mm-hmm.
TV writer after all. There is
Yeah.
some level of like, I want to have fun with people, despite him being, basically a genius at
Very
this point.
intellectual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he did consider that, but I guess, as he would say, the more noble thing is, what if we examined what actually happened, or what could happen after this person dies? Because no matter how you think about it, Logan Roy is the center of this show. He is the one person that everybody makes their decisions around, even in scenes where, whatever is happening might be happening. He's hardly ever looking at people, giving them eye contact, right? He's hardly ever, like, he's so powerful that everything revolves around him. He gives
Mm-hmm.
out eye contact more as a form of quick acknowledgement or as a reward to make people feel seen. He's hardly ever paying much attention. Meanwhile,
Or
everybody,
like an insult. Like,
yeah,
are you
exactly.
mad? Why would you say
Exactly. So
that?
you
Yeah.
when he looks you in the eyes, you really feel it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a contrast, everyone is always looking at him. He is constantly in the center of everyone's universe. And when somebody like that leaves a show, when an actor like Brian Cox leaves a show, I mean, there's going to be such a
Mm-hmm.
huge gap. So this is exciting on some level, because it's like, what could they possibly have cooking that they feel confident getting rid of Brian Cox?
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird, because Jesse has also said that, the truth is, at the end of the day, this show is called Succession.
It's called
So
Succession. Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end
Yeah.
of the day, there has to be some kind of succession. And I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, I mean, he said this in an interview with the New Yorker. I think it only makes sense that we would see, how people would react to him suddenly leaving. I think it's very
Mm-hmm.
telling that, there was all this back and forth regarding Jerry, who I feel many people have forgotten is on paper the actual successor to Logan.
True. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
so, and
I
they
actually
didn't
forgot
fire her
about
in
that.
time to change that. So right now, I feel like a lot of people are going to have to contend with Jerry and whatever she's put in place.
Yeah.
That's number one, and number two is, it's also a matter of, like we said it, or as we discussed in the war room we did before the season started. It's almost as though the only way that Logan's not going to give away control. So the only way that could happen is if he died, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else had to kind of fight for it. So now it's almost as if this is where Succession starts. Like, we've been watching a 3-season
Yeah.
prequel
Yeah.
to get to know these characters. Like, we could honestly just like give somebody who's never watched Succession the show and say, start here, the family, the patriarch just died. Like literally, the
Mm,
patriarch of this family just died, and now somebody's going to take over. And that
yeah,
person would essentially see how everything goes from this point, and they would have some context. But we have all the context because now we know who everyone is and what they might do, and that's where the surprises are going to come from. So
yeah.
I find that
It,
as such an interesting choice because now we have almost a full season of the actual succession.
yeah, it's almost like it's an open secret that obviously Logan was meant to die towards the end of the first
Yeah,
season. That was kind of like the
that
original
was their
original
plan.
idea
Yeah.
for the show. Yeah, so it's almost like whatever happens now in the next 7 episodes was what was meant to happen in every season after season
Uh
one,
huh.
or kind of like in the original pitch. We're gonna get back to that noble reason you mentioned about how what happens after Logan
Hmm.
dies, because I think it's what really excites me. I think it's like the creatively exciting thing about Logan dying in episode 3, which is why I didn't think it was going to die in final episodes. But before that, I want to talk about like just like you said, Logan being the main character, because I wasn't on last week's episode with you and James, and I was gonna like mention because it was on my kind of like my early notes. I was gonna ask you guys, who do you think is the who is the main character of Succession? Like, obviously, I think most people be like, "Oh, it's Kendall." Obviously, like it's Jeremy.
Absolutely.
Jeremy Strong has shot out of cannon. He's been the guy that's like gets all the fan love. I was like, watching that, I was like, "Oh, Logan is the
Yep.
main character." Like, this show is about Logan Roy. It's not like if Jeremy Strong wasn't the actor, he might be a supporting actor,
Yeah.
right? Like that character might be a supporting character. Like this show is about Logan, and then you're not like, oh, we've killed our main
Like,
character.
look, yeah,
We've
exactly.
we've Ned Stark
Essentially, yeah,
Logan Roy.
that's it.
Like we've
You
killed
said
our
it.
main character.
You said it because yeah, because
Um,
like Jeremy is more like maybe the emotional heart of the show for a lot of fans,
mhm,
but
mhm.
Logan is sort of what every decision every character makes goes through. So like he is basically the source of every domino effect, and that
Yeah.
makes him the main character essentially, at least on a
That
technical
being
sense.
said, if HBO and Succession can do some like voter fraud and put Brian Cox in supporting actor for this season, I would very much appreciate that, so that we can get him the Emmy, because he's going to be in 3 episodes out of 10.
Hmm.
That's not a lead number. If you can get him supporting for this
I feel
season,
like they're
let's
still
get
gonna
him an
pay
Emmy.
him though, because I listened to him kind of talk about this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's how they judge.
Yeah, that's not. It's not how
First
they.
of all, why would they
I
pay
don't
him
know.
for
I
not
think
acting?
maybe because maybe they didn't give him enough heads up. Brian Cox was saying, "Yeah, I'm fine with it. This is a great decision as long as you keep paying me." And then he laughed. I mean, he was saying this
He was
to
probably
Garage
joking.
Pusher. He
Yeah, he
was
was
probably
probably
joking about that.
yeah, he was probably
But he did say
joking.
he
He was
had a
probably
lot of
joking.
respect for Jesse. He called him a genius, and he says he has even more respect for him now for deciding to end this show because
Hmm.
this show could have honestly gone on the way they write. They probably could have done at least 6 seasons. I would say this show had maybe more than five, like 5 or 6 seasons.
Oh yeah, I mean, like Jesse said it, and obviously no shade to like Showtime, the channel. We are very much enjoying Paramount Plus and Showtime's Yellow Jackets, but Showtime is a channel that has really pushed a lot of their shows to go long seasons. You're thinking about like Ray Donovan and Homeland and things like that,
Billions.
right? And maybe even billions, right? So there's a version of I was it was again thinking of last week's episode. There's a version of Succession that is multiple seasons of the first 45 minutes of last week's episode,
Hmm.
right? The fun part. But then I was like, but then when you get to the last 10, I was like, oh no, this is why the show has to end. Because it's telling a story about this family and their trauma and their cycle of abuse. And you can't tell that for 10 seasons. Like this show has to end because of that karaoke scene in
It
last
has
week's
a sell
episode.
by date.
Um, yeah, exactly. I mean, look, you can you can do 6 seasons of Greg saying he looks like if Jaws, if people in the town worked for Jaws. Like you can do that, but then, like you said, some episodes will be good, some episodes will be bad. They want to do it properly. Did you cry during this episode?
I did not, though I probably was on the verge of it. I think on some level, crying for me would involve a level of sadness. And I don't think I felt sadness until maybe towards the end. I think for most of the episode I was actually in shock.
I was like,
Yeah,
wow,
I
they did
was
it.
in shock
Like
because like not just on
when Tom calls
yeah.
Roman I think I gasped. I was like, "Oh, they're actually about to do this,
Yeah,
aren't
like
they?"
the thing is, I wasn't even just in shock on that level of the, viewer analyst. I was just on the level of somebody who is so immersed in this action because the actors are so good. Like just somebody who's ostensibly like a person that knows the Royals. I'm just like, no way this man is that. I was and you think about all the signs, even the fact that Shiv was like, why didn't you come and tell me? But if she had just answered Tom's 2 or 3 phone calls, she would have
Twice,
had
yeah.
that chance. And
Should have spoken
that
first,
is
yeah.
crazy.
Speaking of actors and Emmys, can we create new categories? Just please,
We might as
because
well.
Jeremy needs an Emmy for this
100%.
performance. Kieran needs an Emmy for this performance.
Kieran
Sarah needs
was
an Emmy for this
eating.
performance.
Kieran was killing
Sarah,
it.
Sarah,
Oh
my
man.
God. Like,
Even Connor,
like Kieran, I'm not trying to take anything. I'm like the fact, because
Alan Rock, man.
we see Sarah go from, what do you call it? Thank you for making me do that, to like being in full tears in one take straight. Like it's there's no cut, but that is her literal transition in
Yeah.
real time. And I was just in awe. Alan Rock's performance, like you said, like everyone's posture changes in this episode. Like when Alan Rock is walking to the secluded space, he's
He
hunched
is,
and
yeah,
slanting in
in
a
a very
very
weird
weird
way.
position. Yeah, Kieran is hunched when he's over the phone. Like obviously Jeremy has been here before in terms of this kind of material, but again, he's just so good. Like the four of them are just so good. I don't want to take away from like the people, Peter Friedman, David Rasher, like Dagmara, who's just like, fuck this shit, I'm going back home after
Hmm.
tonight. This is a job for
Frank,
me.
Carl, Carolina. Yeah.
Matthew, of course, like it's just like that moment when Frank hits the
I
cockpit,
felt that. That
because
was
it's just like,
great.
I was
That
just
was
like,
actually great.
he's like, this has been my friend for 40 plus years, like longer than you guys
Yeah.
were born, longer than you guys have been alive. Sorry, it's just, yeah, like look, the act, and
He's
that's what I
like,
was thinking.
Kendall,
Obviously,
listen to me. Like I just that was just so well portrayed.
yeah, there'll be a lot of comparisons this episode, not in terms of like direct comparison, but just like um upper echelon things of like
Yeah.
Ozymandias, the suitcase from Mad Men, like every show's kind of like
I
breakout,
actually have
no,
one
not
too.
breakout, but like,
This low key reminded me of the Red Wedding because I
yeah,
had this
obviously, yeah,
feeling that more people were going to die for some reason, especially when Kendall started walking towards water. I said, please, please, please.
just
I don't know what this episode is turning
just take a
into.
plug. But I think my thing is that all those other shows, episodes, whatever, I feel like there's maybe one, two breakout
Hmm.
performance. Like Ozymandias is really just Bryan Cranston just cooking for the entire episode, right? I don't think I can remember a show on this level with an episode of this level with so many people just doing
So
incredible
much
work,
nuance in the
like just
portrayals.
incredible work across the board. It was just yeah, I was just like, and one thing, I was just on top of my mind, I was just like, they've unlocked, so now they've unlocked Jeremy. Because another thing is that Kendall has taken a backseat this first two episodes, right? He's been having fun. And even watching on my rewatch, seeing where Kendall starts this episode, where he's like surprising
Yeah.
Roman, and where he ends up, I was like,
And then he
Jesus
becomes Big
Christ,
Brother
this
again.
is such a great episode of TV. So yeah, they've unlocked Roman for the rest of the season. I
Hmm.
don't sorry, they've unlocked Kendall, but we'll get into that in a second. The reason I was asking if you cried, because always lots of people have said they cried. Not to blow up her spot, but Priscilla messaged me and said that she cried. And I'm beginning to feel bad because I don't cry at media.
I do
So,
sometimes.
so now
I was really on the
I'm beginning to
verge.
feel
Like
like,
I was low key losing my mind because the truth is the directing was amazing. And to kind of
mhm,
get into that, a few days ago I was just watching some of the like the pressers for this final season. They've been
yeah,
doing, I don't know if you noticed, but they've been doing way more than usual, right?
it's the final
Exactly.
season.
So
Yeah.
I thought maybe, okay, this is just because it's the final season. But I noticed that there are quite a few extended interviews as well. And in one of them, Kieran Culkin is talking about something that he and Mark Myler did, where like,
hmm
they did something big in one take. He said he can't talk about what it is. And I was like, okay, I guess
hmm
at some point we'll see it. But as soon as this happened, I immediately understood it. Because what they did for this episode was they did everything the normal way. They spent like 5 or 6 days filming all the individual parts of the main
Yeah.
chunk of like the information dissemination. that happens here.
Yeah, the big like
Yes.
30-minute
And it's
section.
like a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
28-page scene. And then Kieran had, well, Kieran credits Mark with it. Mark credits Kieran with it. I guess
Because yeah, it's a very
I'm
funny
gonna
back and
credit
forth
both.
going on.
And they said, okay, what if we just did everything all at once? And they did.
Hmm.
They did a 28, like, how do I put this? To kind of give it context, you can spend like maybe like a day or two shooting like 2 or 3 pages of a script in a film, like in a feature film.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is TV, right? This is TV, and it's 28 pages. There is a lot of dialogue. Succession's probably is its best asset, other than just the character fleshing out, is the dialogue, and that dialogue works well because of those characters. And the truth is, they nailed this so well that I don't even know where to start. Like, I was watching this thinking, I'm gonna come here and sit down and we're gonna talk and we'll just be looking at each other like, what do we even, like, there's nothing left.
Well, like I told you before we started recording, I didn't have like the kind of notes I normally have. Because I'm
Yeah,
just like, where do we start?
because
Where do
even
we
on a
start with?
technical, like, in a technical sense, right? Because I really like
Hmm.
cameras. I've done a lot of filming, right, in my own time, and they shoot Succession on film for the most part. That's one of the reasons it
Hmm.
has this iconic, beautiful look that it has, right? Even if you have like, I don't know, like, I don't know, let's just call it the longest like roll of film that is available. That really can only shoot for
Hmm.
10 minutes at a time. Now, Succession typically is
Yeah,
shot in this like pseudo guerrilla style, where you have like one or two, maybe three cameras coming at the same thing from different angles out of each other's view, which is why they're able to cut so
yeah,
quickly. And then they have all those like flash zooms that make everything feel so funny, so real, and so immersive, right? Basically, they kept doing that, and they started them all at different times so that when one camera is running out, they can switch to the other camera and then switch its roll of film and then continue filming. So
yeah.
basically, there would always be at least one camera rolling. So in order to film
Filming.
for
Yeah.
this, like maybe 30 minutes or so, they had to have that going at all times on a boat. Right? And according to Mark Mylord, a crazy, like, you wouldn't even expect how much, like, a crazy chunk of all that, of that one shot take, fell into this episode. And like,
Yeah.
that is just amazing to me. If it made everything feel so
Because I
real,
remember,
the whole experience of processing the
yeah, I remember
information for the
seeing
viewer.
in real time. Yeah, I remember seeing the Sarah Snook interview, and she was like, there's a scene that they do it in one take,
She
30
talked about
minutes."
it too.
And in my head, I was like, that's a bit weird because
Yeah.
that's not Succession style, right? I know, like, it's a bit weird to have a one take
hmm
30-minute sequence. Like that would feel weird in the show. But obviously, then you now see how it's done, and I remembered immediately. So I don't even know if you even know this, but Better Call Saul,
Yeah.
the final season for the people that were here for Better Call Saul, the final season, Jimmy and Kim's breakup. Apparently, they shot that in one take. Well, obviously, in the episode,
hmm
it's edited, but they shot that in one take, kind of like for the same reason. Like, so that you feel the emotions start from 0 to 100. So from the moment, like, was it Jimmy walks in? Yeah, from the moment Jimmy walks in to the point when like Kim walks
Uh huh.
back into her room and closes the door. That's almost
Yeah.
10 minutes, isn't it? I think. Yeah. So they shot that in one take, but then it's not edited like that. It's cut, but they shot that in one take just to help the performance. And I think that was obviously the same thing that happens here because it's not they're not shooting in one take like, oh, let's be flashy and show that we've done it in one take in the final edit. But again, if you know me, I'm all for that. I like being flashy, but then they're doing it to help the
Yeah.
performance. They're doing it for the storytelling to not just have to come in and be crying and come out and be happy again. Even though apparently Sarah is very good at that. Yeah, okay. Um I want to just maybe I should leave this for the end actually. Okay, let's go on it. Okay, actually I have some like 4 or 5 lines that just really, even though I didn't cry, they just
hmm
really broke my heart. I was mentioning about not crying and I'm beginning to feel like Roman at Shiv's wedding when he's doing his toast and he's like, I don't
hmm
feel anything. I'm beginning to wonder if I feel, maybe I should feel so. I feel like, why am I not crying at these things? When Kendall says "Shivy, honey," like
Yeah.
trying to get Shiv, heart beginning to
Okay.
break.
I'll
Like my
give you
heart is
one.
beginning to break.
Yeah.
When when Shiv is like talking to
Yeah.
Tom on the phone, and then he's like, "I don't know, honey." I'm just
Hmm.
like, "Oh, this just Jesus Christ!" Then Shiv replies to him, "Are you just being nice
Yeah.
to me?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god!" I was like,
Hit after
"Oh my
hit,
god,
like
this
straight for
is
the jugular. These
painful."
writers, man.
And I didn't hear this the first time, but like when Kendall is like to Jess,
I
"My
just
dad is
need
dying.
facts. I want to do facts.
I'm just gonna give you the facts." Jess says, "Are you okay?" On the other end, and I didn't hear that the first time. And look, we haven't had Jess Connor this season,
I,
but
I was even thinking,
that
why
was
is
when she
Jess
had
on
to
this
say,
plane? Like she works for Kendall.
no, it's just on the ground.
Okay, she wasn't
No, I
on
don't
the
think it's on the
plane.
plane. I don't think it's
Okay,
on the plane. I don't think
I
it's
was
on the plane.
confused.
No, it
I
was
was
one of
confused.
the no, because he calls Jess is like, "My dad
Okay,
is dying. I need
okay,
to get the," and then Jess says, "Are you
yeah.
okay?" And I was like,
Do you know the one that got
"Oh,
me?
that's," because she's like she's taking all the notes, but it's like, "Are you okay?" What was the one that got you?
Uh, when Connor's initial response is, "He never even liked me." Hey God.
Oh, oh,
No,
I didn't want to put that there because it was too obvious and too painful.
that
But
one was
yeah,
just like,
yeah,
what?
he
No,
does it
it's
with
the
he's
way
like,
it's like, okay, so
okay,
is he dead?
huh,
Like that's such like a like the older brother thing to do is like, okay, he's still in the mode
mhm.
of I need to
Give me
take
the
care of
facts. Give me,
everybody
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah,
And then all of a sudden, like you can see Connor, like you can see his walls breaking down little by little, right? And then he gets to the point where
hmm
he now starts to process, wait, this is happening on the day I'm getting married. Right. You can see when he actually
oh,
starts to
yeah,
physically manifest that realization. And I think that's so crazy. And it's all it's not just the performances that do that, it's the writing. Like what does it say about the writing and us as viewers and of Logan as a character that when this started, I'm sure most of us thought it was a sick joke, like some type of trick, right? The writing is just amazing for that because the way Tom starts with "your dad is sick," I mean, we as viewers were like
hmm
just as confused as anyone would be in that situation. Like Roman is like, "Wait, what?"
But also, we have had the piss mad king last season. We thought, okay, maybe he could make it out of this
Oh
again.
God.
Like, yeah, like you don't really think it's gonna happen until you're like, oh, okay, it's gonna
Because
happen.
yeah, there were
It's
so
no
many
longer happen, isn't
unspoken
it?
moments. Like one of the reasons, like I don't have, I mean, I have a bunch of moments as well. In terms of lines, like for example, um, after everything that has happened, I know I'd like to get into Ruben and Jerry a little bit later, but there's this moment towards the end of the episode where after everything that's happened between them in the episode, he's essentially trying to cry out for help, and she just leaves him there.
Mm. He
That
just walks
felt
away. Yeah,
so brutal, and
yeah.
that that line and the corner line for me really did it. But there were also some unspoken moments, like after the press conference where Shiv hugs Tom because like she really needs that. And despite everything that's happening, she does
hmm
love him. But then they have to kind of get back into character, so they go away. There's the fact that like Roman is the one person in the group who's like, I need to see this to believe it, which is why he's the only one that goes to see the body, right? And the
hmm
others kind of just go and they go their separate ways. I don't know if that's like an effect of luxury, like because most families they'd be going to the same place after something like this to kind of be together, but these guys don't want that, right? But
Yeah.
then another big one, another big one was when they show everyone leaving and they just show Colin looking shook. Man,
Colin
like
was
that
sad.
actually,
Colin was.
without a
Colin was.
single word,
But it would be. It would
he
be.
was his
He was his
best
best
pal.
pal. He was
I
his
don't think
best
he even
pal.
realized that he was his best
Um.
pal. Like,
uh,
because he was like, literally, he's like, okay, what am I gonna do now? This is the person I spend the most time with on this planet, right? And this is also my purpose in
mm.
life because my only job is making sure he doesn't get shot. So,
So two quick things. So when I started believing that Logan was going to die,
mhm.
as in before this episode, I thought it was going to be like a shooting because I was very interested as to why Colin was getting a bigger role
Mm,
this season. So I thought like he was going to have like an impact or
okay.
relationship with the death. But then secondly, I think it's very, and again, look, we've back to high school literature class. I might be reading too much into this, but I was very interested in the fact that from that Colin shot, they literally in the same shots transitioned to
Hmm.
Tom. Because what you just said is like, this is my purpose. What do I do now? Tom is having
Yeah,
those exact feelings.
we
And we're going
will.
to talk about Tom in a second, trust me. But I just thought it was very interesting for them to share that shot. Um, speaking about reactions to the death, there's a moment that you could show me the script of this episode and it's in the script. I won't believe you because like I think that's 1,000% improvised. Is when they've all gone with Connor into like the second space, and I'm
Okay,
gonna
he
say
does his
Roman
little
laughing,
hug
and
thing.
Kieran reaches out for his he reaches out for Connor's hand, and Connor hugs him in this weird, and I was like, that's improv. That there's no way that was in the script or directed. That was Roman trying to like reach out to his eldest brother and
But
comfort him, and then like
Roman is like
it's just a
so like
weird.
almost physically incapable of emotionally effective touch.
It's a weird physical caricature. Yeah, it's just I was just like, that's definitely just improvised. Um, we're gonna take a quick break, and I won't do that. Rather, when we come back, see, I'm so emotionally distraught. I'm losing my words. When we come back, we're gonna talk about I don't know actual things, actual analysis,
Perhaps if we
maybe.
can manage it.
We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I mentioned earlier in this episode how I just really felt that this was just a great creative decision to kill him off in this episode and not like at the end of the season. Um, so there definitely has to be a fallout amongst the kids, right? From my thinking, I think you already have the fact that Roman was aligned with his dad for the last 12 or so hours. He basically fired Jerry on behalf of his dad. There's that voicemail which may or may not play a part um in the show going forward. I we have that shot of Kendall and Shiv holding hands as they're about to go tell Connor. We have that obviously now in I'm sure instantly iconic shot of them of the hug. Um the way I read it is that that just means that we're priming ourselves for the breakup, the fallout. Like I don't know if this show ends with all of them being on the same page. I think we've seen them kind of be on the same page for the last 3 episodes. And I think that's just kind of like leading us to which is also the same way how Logan was so great the first 2 episodes because they knew he was gonna die in episode 3. Like Brian Cox was on fire the first 2 episodes. So I don't know. What do you think? What does this move mean for you from a creative point of view?
Well, I think that it opens up a lot of opportunities because like I said before, um this whole thing feels like sort of a new beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have this big character who's no longer there, and because he's no longer there, the show will feel very different, which is why it would probably feel um like a whole new narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the siblings kind of moving against each other potentially, but we also have something that's very common in family run businesses where like the leader goes, all the lieutenants there try to cut out the children because the children tend to be hapless.
Mm-hmm.
So, we like Frank, Carl, Hugo, Carolina, all these people,
Jerry.
Tom, Jerry, like they've all been on some level comic effect, especially Frank and Carl up until this point. But these are seasoned businessmen that have worked with Logan for upwards of 4 decades,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they really wanted to get these people, like the kids, out of anything good, they probably could. Which is why when when they were like, do you guys want to be in on the statement? And I think one of them was like, we just need 5 minutes. I was like, if you don't go and stand in that press conference right now, you can't blame anybody for whatever happens to you. Because Kendall put it best. Whatever we do today will be what we did the day our father died.
Mm-hmm.
It will be remembered. This is how we will go
That
down.
breakdown was so incredible from Kendall. Yeah, when he breaks down everything
He
exactly.
really stepped
Yeah.
up. And I think maybe the relatability of Succession lies in the fact that we all understand success and failure. I've talked before about how Succession is very good with, not making wealth feel attractive, despite constantly showing us what it can do. And I think on some level,
I disagree with you on that actually.
on how like it sometimes makes wealth unattractive.
Just as a quick aside, and I think I disagree with you because I've watched Industry, And
Okay,
industry makes you unattractive.
yeah,
Succession, I want to live in that
industry
world.
definitely stepped it up a notch because
Like I think,
you actually forget that those characters are rich because they're
yeah.
suffering so much.
hmm So industry, I don't want to live. I don't want to be like. I wouldn't give anything to live that life that they live. But Succession, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll take it. Well, I'm attracted to that. I'll take that.
Yeah, I feel you.
But
But yeah,
again, obviously, it's not like billions of suits. It doesn't. It's not like all glossy. I understand what you
wealth
mean,
porn.
but
Yeah,
yeah, it's not exactly wealth porn. But I would live the life of Succession. A little familial trauma, that's fine. That's
yeah,
fine.
like,
I'll figure
but
it
that's
out.
the thing. I think that's how they kind of stand out. The fact that they do understand their characters in a lot of
Mm,
ways. It's not just like some just another eat the rich drama. It comes
mm,
back to
mm,
how well these characters are being portrayed, and leading up to this point, like I think we're meant to accept or we're meant to believe that these first two episodes, or even these first three, all happen in the span of 3 days. Like each episode is a day. And
yeah.
Brian Cox said that, and I think that makes sense.
hmm
If we look at the beginning of the season with the birthday, right? I didn't really think of it that way at first, moving into episode two as
Yeah, I
the
thought there was more
literal
time
next day.
between. Yeah, between
Yeah,
one and two. I thought there was more time. Yeah.
but if we decide to assume for a moment that it is a 3 day span, then that would mean that the next day after his birthday, because of what the kids have done with Pierce, he decides, let me go into ATN and show my face,
hmm
right? And then it ends up with the rehearsal, and then the rehearsal happens the day before the wedding, so then the wedding is the next day right after that.
hmm
And you know Roman was actually very annoyed with Logan. One of the reasons he made that call and left that voicemail was because there's a part of him that's like, really, at this point, you really wouldn't attend your own son's wedding. Like, you
hmm
attended
hmm
Shiv's wedding, and that tells a lot about how Logan ranks these kids in his head. But
He went to Caroline's wedding.
yeah, he even went to Caroline's wedding. But that one is more of like a show of power and force.
True.
but but I think with Shiv's wedding, he actually kind of like, that was more an act of love than anything else. Which is why he was so hurt that Kendall brought that bear hug during the wedding. It's like, this was supposed to be something sacred for our family. Like, I came here, we haven't seen each other since the vote of no confidence. Everything was supposed to be fine, and
No,
now you do
since
this.
Austerlitz, since the
Oh,
therapy.
since oh yeah, since Austerlitz, yeah, true. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of led to Logan maybe spiraling, in a sense. Like, maybe he's spiraling more than we realize in these first few episodes.
So it could have been like the stress that
Yeah,
obviously nobody's going to diagnose what happened to him, but I'm saying it could have just been like the stress of is Connor getting married on a Friday.
I feel like this was either. I mean, Jesus rose, but Logan did not. Happy Easter, everybody!
Jesus
But,
Christ.
but yeah, I feel like this was maybe Friday, or it was Sunday, because they kept talking about when the market opens, and that
Yeah,
made
the
me feel
market
like
is
it
not
might be
open
Sunday.
is the market open on weekends?
No, it is not. The
No, because
market
they were like
decided to take a break.
they said should we wait till the markets close?
Oh, I thought it
Which
said
is what
to.
no, they
Okay,
said
actually, if they say if it's markets closed, then that makes sense. That means it's a Friday,
Friday,
because
yeah, because they're
we
like
we do see Roman showing on his phone that the stock tanked
yeah,
once
because
word got out.
yeah, because they were like, should we keep them in the air to the markets close and then like the markets open off on Monday? So that's what I was like, why Connor, why are you getting married on a Friday, man? What's
Maybe
going
that
on,
was,
Connor?
maybe, I don't know. Maybe he felt that he wanted to make it like a Friday night outing for everybody who showed up, and a lot of
Fair.
people did show up,
Oh
but then a
yeah,
lot of people
a lot
left.
of Willa has a lot of black friends. Willa,
She
this was the
really
most
does.
black people I've seen. Also, just while we're on black people, we agreed that it was the
Greg.
girl that Greg was talking to that spilled the news, right?
Um,
Because she's a journalist.
Yeah, I'm willing to believe it was her, or maybe it was Greg himself. Because when Tom made that, I was saying I was gonna talk about Tom and Greg in a bit, but Tom makes this call to Greg that's like, don't leak this, but when you leak it, make sure people know that I was here.
Ah, okay. So I read that as don't leak this, but when you talk to like if you talk to people one on one, make sure they
Yeah,
like you talk to the big people one on one.
yeah. I
Actually, yeah, but I
I
definitely
think
think it
it
was
could
like
have gone either way, because
yeah,
Greg actually has a funny way of doing things. I remember, like, because I mean, Tom said that he has some Greglets there with him, right? But it makes you wonder, like, what does Greg actually do that he needs three people to fill Greg's role?
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize Greg does quite a lot for Tom. Like that whole executive assistant thing, they've gotten into quite a rhythm. Like we know that they're the disgusting brothers and
Distant
they're kind of
brothers.
bumbling idiots, but those guys get work done. Like Tom
Yeah.
has actually been, he gets his stuff done, and he's kind of risen as a lieutenant for Logan. He's kind of gotten to the like he's gone to the point that maybe we see close to kind of where Carl is. He's not a Frank yet, because Frank, I'd say, is probably Logan's closest one at the beginning of the
Hugo?
show.
Hugo. Not Carl. Hugo, maybe.
Okay,
But you
yeah,
think he's higher than Hugo?
I think he's higher than Hugo now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
he's head of ATN at this
He is
point,
head of it, yeah.
and Logan was saying that he's getting ready to like get rid of Sid. So now that
Logan was going to kill 2 women.
yes, for
I
no
just thought
good
about
reason,
that.
like he
That's
really
not
was.
good. That's not a good look on
It's
him.
very bad for the brand. And this reminds it was speaking of the spiraling. I've mentioned, or I mean, I've mentioned how he'd make these calls to Sid at night, right? And that reminds me
Yeah.
of how Rupert Murdoch would call Kara Swisher, the world's best tech journalist, and because at that point I think Kara was actually working for News Corp, so he
Mm-hmm.
would call her to like talk about the internet and like all these tech companies, and she's like, "Leave me alone." And there's so many similarities there. Of course, there's similarities with other media billionaires like Sumner Redstone, but I think in this case, especially with this episode, it's very Murdochian because
Mm-hmm.
one thing that happened in 2018, all of a sudden, that nobody expected was Rupert Murdoch collapsed on his super yacht, and all his kids
I
were
didn't know
in.
this.
Yeah, he collapsed on his super yacht, and this yacht is crazy. By the way, it's kind of like it makes mansions look tame, and he collapses there. I think he's with the person he was dating at the time or his fourth wife,
Isn't
and
he about to get married again?
he got married. His I don't know if he's getting married again. I'd have to
No,
check,
no,
but
he's literally engaged 2023. I know this.
okay, then that would be his fifth marriage because
That'll be a new wife.
his
Yeah.
fourth marriage happened a few years ago when he turned 90. And I think that person is about 40, something like that. So
What a combination. What an incredible combination of words. His fourth marriage happened a few years ago when he turned 90.
yeah, that's the world we're living in. But yeah, he collapsed on that yacht, and all his children had to decide, like they had to come in from wherever they were to figure out what was going on. And I think the first episode of Succession and this episode of Succession that we just watched kind of take some cues from that real life event, because
Yeah.
it's such a bad situation to be like your parent is ostensibly dying somewhere. You can't do anything
Mm-hmm.
about it. You can't come in. Of course, and the difference here is that Murdoch survived that, and he's still, alive and kicking today, and I guess getting engaged. Whereas Logan didn't, and now we're going to see, quite a lot of fallout, as you said. So I feel
Yeah.
like there's a lot of trends that people would have to kind of give, like put their finger on. Um, I don't know. Like, how do you feel
Yeah.
about what each person might do? Like, I know everybody reacted differently, everybody
Mm-hmm.
processed differently through the course of the episode. But now I guess we have to think about what they're going to do going forward.
Okay, let's be quick. First of all, so I just did a quick Google, and Rupert Murdoch has cancelled his wedding. So they
Oh
were
God.
engaged for 2 weeks.
Okay.
A two week engagement. Also, this episode reminded me a lot of episode 2 of season 1, Shit Show
Hmm.
at the Fort Factory, just because obviously that was the first time that you thought, oh, this guy's about to die.
Yeah.
Okay. So we obviously have that. Um the kids have had 2 businesses in the first, and if you're going 2 days, it's 2 businesses in 2 days, because you obviously had the 100, they cancelled out, went for PGN. Now obviously Waster is in play, right? So you're like, there's the option of, do they just say fuck PGN, we're going back to fight for, does it go back, like you said, to becoming, in Logan's words, a fight for a knife in the mud? Are they going back for Waster?
I feel like they have no
But I,
choice because Matson
I
is
remember
not
in the
going to do the
trailer,
deal without Logan.
yeah, but I remember in the trailer there's a scene where obviously Roman is like telling
I
Martin, we're
hate
gonna
you.
fuck you and everything. I hate you, whatever. And I always thought that was like, even this episode, I thought that was him going on behalf of his dad. So I thought maybe his dad was not gonna die, or his dad was gonna die and they weren't gonna like make it public. He was still going to act to Martin like he was alive. Anyways, so obviously we know, even if it's just Roman or it could be all the kids, they're going to interact with Martin regarding this deal.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't think maybe they might want to buy PGN to add it to the thing. It's important that Tom says in the beginning of this episode that Martin is a bit wary on the sectioning off of ATN, and then Logan says that's off the table. But now Logan is one off the table. So like,
Hmm.
do they sell ATN and bring PGN? Like, do you get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's like I can't. Which is again why I just really love that he died in episode 3, even though I would have loved to see more Brian comes. Like, there's just so many things that could happen. If he dies in the penultimate scene of the season of the show, it's not.
Yeah.
It's the end. It's
It's
not. You're
the
not seeing
end,
the
and then
fallout of the
it's
death.
like, okay, so who takes over now? Like, is it open ended? Like, it won't feel earned like when we see them just like crown somebody, right? So,
Yeah,
and we definitely don't want like, you know, a Game of Thrones
yeah. It's
season
like
finale situation.
put it in terms that for confidential listeners can understand, or even people that like listening to your voice can understand. This is Viserys dying in episode 8, and right, and now the war
This is that
begins.
literally, yeah. Like, there's Viserys dies in episode 8, and then we have like 2 episodes just to see how people process that information, and now we have the rest of the show to deal with the fallout, because
Yeah,
that
and
the
I
Dance of the Dragons is the fallout of Viserys' death. That's what the
yeah,
whole thing
and obviously
is.
I hope it would be Kendall, Shiva, and Roman versus the world, but that's not going to be the case. I'm sorry, I can't see that happening. I feel like that breakup is happening, and it might be dire, or it might be something that they can fix. We don't know. Um, which is why I've always said that, like, I don't think I don't care about no, I do care from a watching TV point of view, but I'm not
Mhm.
like fully invested as to who wins the company. I don't think that's what the show is about. I don't think the show is about
Yeah.
who becomes CEO at the end. That's not the story of the show. That's not the footnote. That's not the summary of what Jesse Armstrong is trying to say. I think it's a lot more about who do these characters overcome either their trauma or themselves,
Yeah.
or are they the ones that we're lampooning? Are they the object of the satire? It's yeah, I don't know. I'm way more interested in all of that
Yeah,
than
I get you.
hey,
You know,
who's
we,
CEO
we
now.
tend to think of Succession as a show about family, a show about money and power, right? The list really
Mm-hmm,
could go
mm-hmm.
on. It's about a lot of things, but I think at its core, really, it's a show about mortality, because the show
Mm,
starts like right from the beginning. It starts with the idea of, I am retiring, so let my son take over so the next generation can come on. Like that's a thing we do in life because of mortality. If we weren't going to die, there wouldn't be anything about, like, you know, somebody, let me groom somebody to take over, right? Then he
mm-hmm,
changes his
mm-hmm.
mind because he decides, you know, he's not going to respect the idea of mortality, and he's going to continue on. So really, Logan has been living on borrowed time for the past, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
1 year. Like, we're still assuming it's 1 year, right?
I'm still assuming that, yeah,
So
yeah.
for the past year, he's been living on borrowed time these past 3 seasons. And I think one of the reasons he cares about legacy so much is the fact that he values life itself a lot less. You know, Brian Cox himself has described Logan as a misanthrope. I think that's why Logan doesn't seem to care how he leaves the world itself, or how his endeavors damage it, much to the ire of his brother Ewan. Um, of course, we know that's one of the main differences between him and his brother. But along these lines, Brian Cox has actually said that Logan doesn't see people as worth respecting. And I think it makes you wonder what kinds of things happen in his life to contribute to that worldview. But he's always trying to
Mm-hmm, yeah.
create, like, Jesse and you know, Mark, different people involved in, you know, the collaboration that is this show, have planted hints here and there as to what shaped Logan. I remember in the Austerlitz episode, when we saw the scars on his back, for example,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
in season 2, when he doesn't want to, you know, go near the house that he grew up in. He's like, yeah, I'm not coming out of this car, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, you know, Jesse Armstrong himself has said that Logan probably would see the way he died in this episode as a good way to go. I mean, he's on a private plane, surrounded by all the people that, you know, say yes, sir. um, he
Mm-hmm.
he would see it as a kind of a happy episode. You know, he's going to do a deal, do what he does best, argue with like people who think they know more than him, and his children are whispering in his ear that they love him. I mean, from Logan's point of view, this is actually not a bad way to go. but this is devastating for everybody else. So I mean, I wonder what signs we can say were there. I remember like when people were looking for, with season 3, the promotional poster had like people in different places and everything, and we talked about that towards the
Hmm.
end of the season. Um, but in this case, people were looking for all that. It's like, oh, is this somebody? Some people are wearing ties, some people are not. Like, who? Look, whose reflection is here? Whose reflection? Like, it's just so many things. But one thing I'm thinking about now is the fact that if you look at that main promotional poster, there is a plane in the reflection of the building.
Is there?
There is a plane.
Oh wow,
There is a
it's
plane.
fucking
Like,
bastard.
wow, these guys really
Um,
play with us. But yeah,
Logan prequel series starring James McAvoy and Ewan McGregor as he's not tall enough, but let's just go with him. HBO green lighted. Let's
yo,
go. James
that's
McAvoy as
bold.
Logan, Ewan McGregor as Ewan. Let's
Anybody
let's do
watching
it.
this on YouTube just saw my eyes turn into saucers as I processed that. I'm like, whoa, that's not bad.
Um, okay, let's spend 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes talking about Tom and Chuckles the Clown and Greg as well. I guess. Carrie's reaction. Shout out Zoe Winters. I don't like
Truly,
Carrie, but the actress
no,
is very good.
she's so good in this
Um,
role. She's so good.
and seeing her smile and laugh just gives a lot of context to the audition tape. You're like, oh, she doesn't know how to process
Literally,
emotions. That's why she
this
was laughing during the
this is what I
audition
was
tape.
saying. She was just nervous. I was telling James last week. I'm like, yo, she has no idea what she's doing.
Oh, oh my god. Yeah. So for Tom and Chuckles, especially, as in the thing I kept thinking was like, what do you do when your umbrella gets blown away by the wind? Like, what happens? Like, Tom and Carrie, you've lost
He
your
was their
protection. Like,
cover.
what happens next?
And I mean, I looked at the weeks ahead trailer, and she is in shambles. I'll tell you,
Oh, I skipped that. Fair
she,
enough.
she,
Yeah, I skipped that
she
trailer.
is in shambles. I'll tell you that. And I think, and
That
the funny
is
thing is,
that's not
nobody's going
surprising.
to take her seriously. That's why it's sad,
Mhm.
because
We literally saw it happen. We
right in
literally
front of
saw
her
it.
face, they weren't taking her seriously.
Carolina was like,
Speaking of,
"Well,
Carolina
I
is
don't know."
cold, bro. Did you know that?
It's
Carolina
shocking.
has always been stone cold, low key.
I told you, Carolina is like, "This is just a job. This is a. I'm not like I'm not invested like you guys. This is not
She's the
emotional for
queen
me."
of I don't care. I'll pass the message. Just let me just when he told her about
Good
Jerry,
Carolina
that's her
episode.
friend.
Very good Carolina episode. Yeah, I mean Jerry's family. Jerry's Shift's godmother. Like Jerry, this is part of Jerry's life. Carolina is like, mm-mm, this is personal. I don't like. She was like, oh, you're getting rid of Jerry. Okay, we can make
And
it
then
work.
she's right there on the spot. She brings up spin of like how they can sell it, and she's just so clinical and efficient. Like, man,
Love her. You have to respect.
yeah,
I I can imagine Karina and Jess just meeting up at a bar on the weekend, like having a full life outside Logan and Kendall. Yeah, but yeah, like Shiv kind of opened the door to Tom. I mean, not to be cynical, I think just the tragedy of everything obviously brings them to closer
hmm
because like Tom is actually being decent. Shiv behaves terribly and then apologizes immediately. Like it's like it's almost like we have to. It's almost a truce, basically. And like when Shiv is like, "Tom, would you tell me what happened again?" That's not. She doesn't want to know what happened again. She just doesn't want to be alone. She doesn't want to go back to wherever she's staying alone. She wants to have somebody that she can hold for this time. And I've always been of the opinion that that relationship was real. Not that it was good or perfect or like. I really felt like there was genuine love there. Let me put it like that. That's the best way to actually
hmm
put it. And that love is shrouded in a lot of weird shit. A lot of like um Tom being a psychopath, um Shave being narcissistic and rude. Like there's a lot of weird shit there. I'm not trying to excuse anybody, but I've always just really felt like there's some genuine love there. And I think in this moment just Shave just couldn't be alone, so she asked Tom to. So yeah, my point is I don't know what happens with those guys. Like does the divorce continue or not? Tom really doesn't have a protection, but you can also see his reaction when he's talking to Greg. Like he's emotionally
I think
like it's
Tom
I don't know, man.
fully respected Logan. I think he wasn't just afraid of him, but he saw him as someone to look up to, someone who essentially brought him
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I was going to say in this episode before I really knew what was going to happen, like I remember thinking last week that, oh, I'll talk about this next week, how upon further inspection, things aren't looking too good for Tom. And this is something I was saying when
Mm-hmm.
Logan was alive, right? Because at this rate, he's not going to really manage his divorce well. Honestly, calling all the different divorce lawyers and you know conflicting them out is an amateur move, because in general, especially at this level, with this amount of wealth and stakes, you want somebody on the other side who is good, as good as the person that you have, because other than that, it's going to drag along. It's going to be very stupid. You don't want somebody representing themselves as well. It's just not the best kind of situation. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that he started to realize that I was maybe going to ease up. I think maybe Logan letting him do that was maybe Logan's way of sabotaging things. I wonder if Logan was just trying to really mess with people and sabotage them in ways they didn't fully understand. Even this whole thing that makes him look like he's committed to ensuring that Jerry and Roman are enemies. um, and that's something I've
Mm-hmm.
thought about before, because I mean, Brian Cox has said, he's not sure that Logan had an affair with Rhea Jarrell, but he feels that in his own portrayal of Logan, that Logan had an affair with Jerry when she first joined. And I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe that's why the
Okay.
idea of Jerry and Roman being intimate rattles him so much. And he's doing his best to
Fair
separate
enough.
them. Right. Right. So I think maybe with Tom and Shiv, he wants to make sure that they don't get divorced. But at the same time, it's not entirely clear that he would care. However,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
however,
Go ahead.
with Logan dead now, Tom no longer has that cover that he would have had if he had left Shiv. So now that Shiv needs him, I can actually maybe see a situation where Tom starts to reconcile with Shiv, or maybe even push for that reconciliation, not just because he loves her and she needs him, but because Tom is actually good of he's actually one of the best characters in this show when it comes to assessing his own prospects. He's very honest. He's very honest with himself about where
Mm-hmm.
things are going, and I think that's why he's lasted so long. Tom looks very hapless
Yeah.
in season one. Like the first few episodes, you're like, "Who is this idiot that just got lucky to marry this girl?" And then you watch the show, and you're like, "Okay, this guy is actually constantly on the pulse. Like, there's a reason he survived." So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's going to continue. I think maybe they might not end up getting divorced, or maybe they will, but it will happen later. I think at this point they would need some kind of renewal of their fallout to continue said separation, because right now
Mm.
they're kind of leaning on each other, because again, Tom is also emotionally broken a bit.
Well, we do know there's that conversation that still has to come. That's in the trailer, and I'm assuming that'll be next
Hmm.
episode probably of where he says there's so many times. I can't remember the exact word, but like there's so many times you've hurt me or whatever he says on the balcony of the
Hmm.
apartment. So maybe they do finally have that talk that Shiv was avoided. I don't think it to be fair, even though it would be very powerful for the cause. I don't think it to be fair to not just quickly touch on the fact that Connor
Yeah, I
was
was literally
married.
just about
That's
to
at
say
least
we
main
do
thing.
not want to be the guys talking about an episode titled Connor's Wedding that don't
Connor's
talk about
wedding.
Connor's actual wedding. Like,
I was about to actually
we
skip
can't
Connor.
be
I
those
was,
guys.
I was like, no, come on, come on. Yeah, I mean, Connor. Fair play to him. He doesn't let the death of a man who he loved, but clearly never respected him as much as he should have, ruin his day. Like I'm sure it was obviously wasn't a happy thing to get married on that
Yeah.
day, but like it's almost like Logan doesn't deserve for him to end his wedding. Like Logan wasn't even coming.
Yeah, and that's
That's
just
also, that's
because
also
people were
another thing
really
you mentioned about.
expecting it, and you can see even from the guests, many of them were hoping to see Logan Roy, because Logan is the biggest
Mhm.
celebrity. Like again, everything revolves around him, right? So every time
Yeah.
something is happening, even with that girl who showed up with Greg in episode one that went to ask him for a selfie, like honestly,
Ching.
I can't. But yeah, like all these different people who are around, like they want to get a glimpse of the Royce, and which is why it was
Mm.
so funny to me when Kendall's like when Roman's like, it's great that everybody's here and like they want to see us, but is there any private room that we can go to where we don't have to interact with people? That was too funny. Yeah, I think
Oh, the tidbit about the loony cake
Yeah, that was actually very
heartbreaking as
sad.
fuck, man. Jesus
I,
Christ.
I think it's interesting that this season we've been getting more and more information little by little about Connor's mom. Um, I
Yeah.
wonder, I wonder how she would have been at this wedding. But yeah, I think it's cool that they did actually get married. Even after, even though it happened immediately following him finally asking her the question that's been on everybody's mind since season one: Are you
Mm-hmm.
with me for money?
Mm-hmm.
So that I thought that was hilarious.
And I think I've realized. I think I might have realized that I'm a romantic when it comes to fictional
Mm.
couples because I've also never always wanted to subscribe to the idea that maybe I just find I think that's too easy. That Willa was entirely with him just for money. Like I've always felt like she
One
felt
hundred
something there
percent.
as
I
well.
mean, I remember in season three at Kendall's birthday where she was like defending him. She was acting like a partner. Even this
Mm-hmm,
season,
mm-hmm.
she looks elevated somehow. Like she doesn't look like she
Uh,
looks kind of like she's
oh,
yeah
she looks the part. She's
yeah
blonder. Like no, she looks the part of what she
exactly
should look like. Not everybody will agree if she looks better, but she looks the part of what she
definitely.
should look like blonder and like that kind of quote unquote trophy wife for a right wing presidential candidate. Like, yeah, she looks the part. But yeah, no, as in, I believe what she says. Like, she's like, look, yeah, there's some security
Hmm.
here, and she doesn't say I love you, but
She's like, I'm not leaving, at least
she
not
says
today.
every
And I'm like, that is,
yeah,
I
like
appreciate that honesty.
I think that's good enough for
Yeah.
him. I genuinely think
It's
that's
good
good
enough
enough
for
for
him.
him.
It's
Like,
good enough for me. Actually,
yeah,
now that you mentioned presidential candidates, isn't it funny that we're 3 episodes in and we haven't seen Mencken? But I know that he's probably going to
oh,
show up next episode.
we're gonna get big, we're gonna
Like
big
with Logan
Mencken.
not being
I'm
around,
not,
that is a massive fallout for the election. I wonder what that's going to do to
yeah, who becomes his
Connor's
puppet
prospects.
master? I think we're getting Stephen Root back as well,
Oh.
who is always a pleasure to see. Stephen Root from the
Yeah,
HBO fam, gonna be on Barry in a
honestly,
few
I
weeks.
think more people like that could just keep showing up out the woodwork, and I wouldn't complain. But I
Mhm.
just keep imagining Marsha appearing because
Marsha! Yo, he's
literally, like,
dead.
so
I
Marsha is
forgot about
definitely going to show up
Marsha.
like in the next few episodes because
I wonder if there'll be a funeral.
there will definitely be
Like
a
there'll be a
funeral, and
funeral
Marsha will
episode.
definitely show. I see Rhea Jarrell showing up as
You
well.
think
I see Caroline Collingwood showing up. There is no way, like most of these people will want to be there. If
I don't think Rhea show. Why would
I feel
Rhea
like she
show?
might. I don't know. I just have this feeling that she might for some reason. But
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. But I know Marsha is definitely going to show up,
I don't know
and the
the
fact that
yeah.
Logan is fully rolling around with Kerry unapologetically now makes me feel like his marriage to Marsha has fully dissolved now. Like either they've gone their separate ways or they're
Well, it's not
separated.
dissolved. She's just in Milan fight
Shopping, yeah.
shopping
So
forever.
it is what it is. So
Um yeah, I mean, because I figured that obviously this would be what brings Eowyn
mhm.
back.
Of course, his brother will be there.
So maybe there will be a funeral
There might
episode
be
too.
at least a scene,
Yeah.
probably, or they could just off
Yeah, I
screen
don't
it.
know if
You know,
there'll be an
Succession
episode.
be doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if it might just come and then it's like the day after the funeral or something. Anyways, yeah, obviously this was, and again, another hint was when episode 2 was not written by Jesse Armstrong and directed by Mark Mylod. I was like, oh, okay, it's probably going to be episode 3 because they're going to do the first two and
Yeah.
probably the last two. So I was just like, oh, I'll get to something big. Anyways, okay.
Uh,
Um, Guys, again, we apologize for obviously it coming late. That's way beyond our control, but we hope that we probably get screeners for coming episodes. If not, whichever way, we promise you we'll have episodes out just a bit later than normal. But yeah, everybody, thank you. Thank you for going through this ride with me. Succession, I think with this episode has probably cemented itself now, as in like even though it has had some great episodes, I don't know if it's had one that like people would put with like the Ozymandias kind of
this
people.
is
So
shaping up to be the Succession episode. Like, and so that's something that you
yeah.
really have to build. Like, they couldn't have had the episode have this much impact without everything they've so painstakingly given us up till this point. Like this is the kind of impact that
Yeah.
you really have to earn, and it's one of those things that's like I'm so proud that like I got to see this when it happened. It's one of those shows that you're just happy that you got a
Mhm.
chance to actually
Yeah,
watch in that time and be part of the conversation.
yeah. And I knew not to go online until I'd watched it. I was
Oh yeah,
telling you I was not going to do
there's
that.
this
So
one friend
thank
of
you. Because
mine who's always running into spoilers, and she's going to listen to this. I had to specifically go and warn her, please stay off the internet, please.
Yeah, I went on Twitter and literally Succession, Logan, Brian Cox, Shiv were all trending. I was like, oh Jesus
Yeah,
Christ!
though
Thank God
for
I'm
me,
watching the episode.
Euphoria was also trending, and I don't know why. I was like, why do I keep like what?
It's random. But yeah, no, this is let's end it here. I mean, I could have spent a whole episode talking about directing of
Mhm.
this episode. The fact that we don't actually see Logan die, like we don't see like a
I think
big
that's part of
him
what
clutching
made it
his
so
chest or
real.
whatever.
Honestly,
So good, like yeah,
the
like how many
direction
times
so good.
everyone that everyone that I've lost in my life, I wasn't there when they passed away. Like you hear it via phone call or via somebody telling you. Like those are just that's just the way life is. Anyway, okay, thank you very much for listening, guys. Ebube, just want you to know that I'm good. This is fine. This is nothing at all.
I
Thank you
very
for the
much don't believe
consideration.
you.
Honestly, I thought this episode was gonna be just me talking us talking about Roman and Jerry. That's how I thought this episode was gonna be at the
Mm,
start. And then they were like, no, more important things are coming. Okay. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Please so rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And yeah, join us next week when we'll be talking about Succession without Brian Cox for the first time ever.
wild.
And we'll be joined by the great Oscar winner, Daniel Kaluuya. Bye guys.